Strategy, creativity, and innovation are at the heart of every growing business. But if your go-to methods aren't quite working the way they used to, then it may be time for a different approach. Here to help retrain our thinking is author of Winning the Brain Game, Matthew E. May. Okay, Matthew, so why should busy entrepreneurs take time to rethink how they problem solve and strategize?
Well, not a lot of time, but a little bit of time. Just to remember what brought them to the party in the first place, which is they found a problem, they realized a need in the marketplace, they came up with lots of things, tried different things, iterated on them, tweaked them, perfected them, marched them out into the marketplace to become successful. And that process is really the creative process, the creative problem-solving process, because problem-solving requires creativity, which is the genesis of innovation. And so running those simple, fast, frugal experiments is the heart of creativity and innovation. And we tend to forget that when we're in the throes of our operation.
What's the most common trap you see business owners fall into when it comes to strategic thinking?
Certainly the most prevalent is leaping to solutions. We are great at brainstorming, at coming up with ideas very quickly, because most of the problems that we try and solve every day just require a quick, simple idea. Entrepreneurs don't feel like they want to slow down to think deeply about anything. I got to work with the LA Bomb Squad, and they were just like that. They came up with ideas very, very quickly to a challenge that I had given them, and they weren't able to solve it. So I taught them a very simple cognitive trick called framestorming. It's a lot like brainstorming, but instead of tossing out ideas and solutions, you toss out questions. Well, why this? How about that? What if we did this? How might we do that? And you begin to think about the problem from different perspectives, come up with different questions, and that leads to far greater, more divergent solutions and far greater creativity.
Let's talk more about creativity. How can we open ourselves up to new, better ideas?
Well, one way is to not shut ourselves off in the first place. We tend to shut our creativity down because we're afraid of failure. And fear is a big factor when it comes to creative endeavors. So one of the things we can do is to become more mindful. And mindfulness really means looking at things not just from one perspective, but from different perspectives, because there's always a different, unique angle that you can take to any problem. And it's the ability to sort of tune in to the present, not be saddled with experiences you've had in the past that might be related to failure, and look at the details of the problem that you're trying to solve. And generally speaking, when you do that, you do open yourself up to more innovative and creative ideas. Now, another way to approach it is what psychologists call self-distancing. Have you ever had the situation where someone presents a problem to you and you sort of see the solution right away and it's easy for you to solve, but they're struggling with it? That's because you don't have the same perspective that they do. You don't have the same emotional connection to the problem. So self-distance. Talk about the problem as if you were a third person. Matt should do this. Matt should try that. Matt's not considering this. And as soon as you do that, you begin to look at things from a different angle, and lo and behold, you're starting to think more creatively.
And in your opinion, what kills innovation in businesses?
There are a couple things, really, especially as businesses grow up, get more complex, more stratified. One thing is that we tend to close our walls to new ideas. One of the things that I notice companies doing all the time is what most management consultants would call not invented here, which is if we didn't come up with the idea, it's not a good one. So the solution for that is called proudly found elsewhere, which is taking a stance on open innovation and deciding to open your walls to other sources of creativity and innovation, other businesses. As an example of this, years ago, the Pringles team at Procter & Gamble had an idea. They wanted to print pop culture icons on the potato chips to try and spark growth. They didn't have the capability. Quick tests showed that it would take them an awful long time at a great expense to develop that capability. So they opened the search outside in their Proudly Found Elsewhere network. And they found, lo and behold, a little bakery in Bologna, Italy, that had developed a technique for printing using inkjet, believe it or not, on fried food. They partnered, developed the process. Pringles experienced a double-digit growth thereafter. So the lesson here is that at some point in time, your ideas will need to be refreshed. As your business grows, it can become more complex. You can tend to be a little bit defensive and protective about your position. Be careful of that. If you get too insular, you'll be playing catch-up.
Matthew, entrepreneurs can get stuck between iterating ideas and trying to perfect them with needing to get an idea out to market quickly. So when is it all right to be good enough?
Well, what you're talking about is something a gentleman by the name of Herbert Simon termed satisficing, which is an idea that suffices and it satisfies, but it's not quite the right solution. It's mediocre. There's a time and a place for satisficing, honestly, and it's when you are, remember I mentioned earlier about experimenting with ideas before they're ready for prime time. That's when it's okay to have a mediocre solution because you're trying to get user feedback, customer feedback, and you can tweak from there, improve from there. That's when it's okay to do. But when you're going to market and you are out there trying to win a place in your segment or your vertical, that's not the good time to have a solution that's less than as good as it absolutely can be. If you have a couple of different mediocre ideas, don't take them out to the marketplace. Cherry pick the best parts, mash them up into a solution that puts you in a winning position. For example, Target found themselves in this exact position years ago. They were stuck. On one end, they had to contend with Walmart. Tough to compete with, the low costs. On the other end of the retail spectrum, they had to compete with the Nordstroms of the world. What they decided to do was to cherry pick the best parts of those two solutions and create a store within a store so that in one part of the store, they could compete with the Walmart prices. In another part of the store, they could approach the kind of retail clothing that you could find in the Macy's and the Nordstroms of the world. So synthesizing was a way to defeat satisficing.
Matthew, thank you so much for your insights today.
Thanks, Caroline.
For more from Matthew, you can follow him on Twitter at Matthew E. May. And that does it for the season finale of Office Small Business Academy. Thanks to Carol, Susan, and Matthew for joining us today. And thanks to you for making our first season a successful one. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'd love to hear from you. Tweet us at Office Small Biz or use the hashtag Office Small Biz to share your opinions and questions with us. And you can find all of our episodes at office.com/smallbusinessacademy. I'm your host, Caroline Goles. On behalf of Microsoft and all of our guests this season, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.